All right. So now we're going to talk about a few species from the Southwest. So Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. And the first one we're going to talk about is from Arizona, Salonica viccasamorum. And there are two subspecies. The nominal species, which would be viccasamorum viccasamorum, and then also the other one is viccasamorum picium by Cicero. It's called the Southwest spring firefly, which is viccasamorum viccasamorum, or the other one is the Gila Southwest spring firefly picium. Habitats to survey: springs, seeps, wet pastures, wetlands in the canyons and riverbeds in and around the Madrean Sky Islands, June to August. You have to be out early for these, from like dusk to dark. Pictures on the right were taken by Margaret Promerman in Arizona, and she allowed us to use them, and they're really nice pictures. Kind of similar to a Futurus species, has a hunched appearance right from the side, does not have the stripe on the elytra. And when you look under a microscope, or if on a really good picture, you can zoom in, the claws on the legs will be both bifid, so both divided. So you can identify this really nicely. This is the only species we have in the genus in the US. None of them are in Canada. You go into Mexico and further south, big diversity, several dozen species. They have greenish flashes, high above the ground, or they're going higher and higher throughout the day. The night, I mean, as it gets darker. The black versus brown head and the antennae color differentiates the two subspecies. I am not 100% sure how often viccasamorum picium is actually collected compared to viccasamorum viccasamorum. And Richard and I think Candace have said that studying maps of perennial water sources may be helpful for identifying potential sites for this. And we have a couple of habitat pictures, one by Candace and one by Anna Walker, who's also, I think, here in the audience. And these are like typical habitats where you could find this species. Only in Arizona, as far as we know. I don't think there's any Mexico sightings, as far as I know.
We just learned of one in Sonora.
Oh, there is, okay. Well,
yeah.
So I don't know much about this species. Honestly, I've seen one specimen in my life of this. So Candace might be able to better talk about this just because she has collected these, I think.
I was able to see the viccasamorum subspecies last year with Anna and Cheryl. I guess Anna wasn't there, but the Piscium or Picium subspecies, until very recently, we only knew it from the type locality. And now we found a specimen in the University of Arizona collection last summer that was identified as that subspecies, and Joe Cicero examined it, and it looks like it is the Piscium subspecies. And so we're expanding our survey efforts this year beyond the Madrean Sky Islands. So that particular subspecies is known from the New Mexico, Arizona mountains ecoregion further north. And so we have some plans to search that area as well this year. But yeah, definitely, we suspect this species might be found in many more places. But, survey efforts, there was a lot done by Cicero in the 80s. And then in the last 3 to 4 years, Cheryl Mullihan, who's another biologist in Arizona, and Joe and a bunch of other folks in the area have started doing more surveys for this species. And like Oliver mentioned, looking at streams that have perennial water during the hottest part of the year. So I believe that is in June, hottest and driest. Cheryl and Ron Day, who's another researcher with TNC previously, Nature Conservancy, they basically, anytime they went to an area that had water during these kind of wet, dry stream surveys, they also found this species in Southeast Arizona. And so it seems to have a really high correlation with that kind of perennial water. So we're hoping to expand survey efforts this year, kind of based on that.
All right. So be on the lookout for that one. Really interesting that that's the only species we have in the US. Then also next, Photinus bivulnerus. In the Firefly Atlas, this is still under Elicneus bivulnerus. So this was a previously in Elicnea. It's called the twice wounded firefly because of the two red spots on the pronotum, the head shield. Kind of like, I guess, looking a little like blood. Otherwise, a very typical, what used to be Elicnea, but also a kind of typically looking for Photinus without the disc bicolored elytra. So no lateral stripes with this one. It's completely black. Again, in the Madrean Sky Islands, you can find this one. In oak woodlands, but especially, but all habitats in the Sky Islands, June through August is a good time for these guys. No light organ for these, so they're daytime flyers. No, they have tiny light organs. I guess they probably don't flash or glow. They're probably what will then use them if they're disturbed or if they are panic. They might panic glow or so. So tiny remnants of the organs. But I think even compared to the other Elicnea, very distinctive looking as a firefly. The antennae are like a mix of filiform, maybe with a little bit of serrate, like very subserrate, a bit, and it's not very big. It's, I think it's it comes close to a centimeter in that area. Also not very common in collections. I have here pictures of the holotype that's at Ohio State University, and they shared these pictures with me. They're from the Patagonia. It's from the Patagonia Mountains in Arizona, the holotype. Was described by Green. And here you have pictures of 4 different views of the genitalia on the right. You can see the lateral and the median lobe very nicely. And you can see it's a little like the lobes are slightly blackish at the tips. But yeah, so if you can find one that's maybe a little weird looking, I guess you can dissect it, but I think overall it's a very distinctive firefly that if you find it, but very, I think, fairly rare. So I don't know if Candace has, we're surveying for this one last time, or if they're going this year about this one, but again, not very often collected and not very often in museum collections so far.
Yeah, we tried looking for this species, but did not have any luck, unfortunately. Still trying to figure out the best way to look for day active species beyond just walking and sweep netting. Difficult to survey for them.
So yeah, be on the lookout, and it would be nice to have more observations for this one for sure, and maybe get some new county records for Arizona to see where they actually, what's the distribution of this one particular one. So yeah, and be aware that it's now Photinus, not Elicnea anymore. Next one, Photinus knolli, which is a called the Southwest synchronous firefly. So we have a synchronous firefly in the Southwest now, not just anymore in the East. You look for permanent wet habitats in southern Arizona, seeps and springs. So maybe like about the same as by Salonika. Early July into September, during the monsoon rain seasons, these will be out. And they flash for about 35 to 120 minutes after sunset. So very weird, probably dependent on the heat, the temperature, or how much rain there was, maybe how long they're out. This one has 3 quick yellow flashes over about a second, and it repeats it every 6 seconds. So this one is not in Lynn Forst's book because it's too far west. So I don't have any picture of the, oh, I have a picture. I might have a video of the, yeah, I have a video on the next slide. Be aware of, your habitat when you visit these sites where these guys are, because of the synchronizing. They, they might be more interesting to many people. And the females are probably on the ground, so don't trample on them. So yeah, be sure you follow the rules, and a good way of how you survey by being aware where you are. Stay on the trails, don't go off trail. And we have a little video by Raphael Sarfati in the Peleg Lab that was shared with us. So, and this, if you see these and take videos, this is a good way to test his little app that we shared with you yesterday to see synchronizing. You can upload your videos and it will analyze them for them, and we'll play it one more time. And you can see their single flashes at the beginning, but then they all flash more or less together, like Photinus carolinus would in Tennessee. So I don't know if either of you have collected this.
Yeah, I was down in Arizona last year with the same Arizona crew to look for this species too. And I did just want to point out that as far as we know, there are only 2 flashing species in southern Arizona. So Photinus nulli and then the Bisalonica that we just discussed. So if you are in Arizona or even some of the mountain ranges just outside of Arizona and happen to see flashing fireflies, please record your observations and share them, because it's very likely it's one of these 2 or potentially something else. But there's still a lot to learn about our Southwest flashing species and otherwise.
So, all right, and next, Photorus flavicalis. Finally, we get to a Photorus that is, I think, very distinctive and easy to identify even by just looking at it. This is the Sky Island firefly. You can find these in the Davis Mountains in Texas, and then some other sky islands in Texas and New Mexico, and then in the Chihuahua montane woodlands ecoregion, and maybe in the desert ecoregion. All records I've seen so far were from Texas, 1 county in Texas exactly. Grassy areas near water in the Sky Islands. So yeah, maybe there might be some overlap with some of the other couple species that we talked about. Maybe even like Bisalonica, early May to early August. So it's out for a few months. Again, after sunset, so once it is dark, so fairly typical for Photorus species. And it has quick rhythmic green flashes. We have some pictures on the next slide. It is dark winged, so the elytra are completely black, and then but it still has the hunched posture. And then the pronotum is like this yellow reddish, I guess, color, where it's more yellowish towards the lateral, the outside of the pronotum or the head shield. And in that specimen, it seems more completely red. The kind of the yellow darkens a bit, it seems. And then the middle is a little bit more like, yeah, more orange or red in that area. And given the distribution, this is, I think, that very distinctive, easy identifiable fireflies, firefly, because of there's not much else, like there's no really any other photoras in that area that looks anywhere close to it. So one of the more easily, and this is one also photora species that we can identify from museum collections. So I can still go in and identify this to species based on a dead specimen. That's which is very rare in photoras. Haven't seen the genitalia. I want to dissect one of these soon in the collection to see if the genitalia are typical photoras. And then here are the flash, like we have pictures of the flashes by Stephen Hummel. So you can see there's a fairly regular flash pattern and seemingly very low above the ground. And yeah, it seems to be in a couple of states or so, but not very like distributed. So I only know of one county in Texas that I've seen. Not sure how the distribution in the other states may be.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. And I see Ross put in a message about this as well in the Q&A, but we did find a specimen that was labeled as coming from New Mexico, but Richard cleared it up for us by contacting the museum curator. And so the New Mexico locality is no longer
okay.
a valid one. So we need to update some of our materials. But yeah, to date, this is only known from Texas and a pretty small area in West Texas.
I can't remember, was it Jeff? This county starts with Jeff. Is it Jeff Davis County or something? I think that might be the only county that I've seen it.
It's also in Brewster County, I believe, which is Alpine. But again, New Mexico is still within the survey region in that very southern New Mexico. There are some high areas that it hasn't been reported from there, but it's still worth keeping an eye out there.
Do we know what the New Mexico specimen was, what it was mistaken for?
It was Elychnia, or now Photinus flavicolus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the other one, okay. So yeah, be on the lookout for these. Maybe we can expand the distribution, the known distribution of these guys. But yeah, it's a fantastic, it's my favorite photoras because you can just identify it easily.
And I will, maybe some of the participants who are tuning in from Mexico, maybe they have some comments about it. But if you just compare this firefly's coloration to other photoras in the United States, it looks very, very unique, you know, with those all black elytra and all orange pronotum. But if you look across the border in Mexico, you'll find a couple different species in the same kind of color, perhaps mimicry complex, or have very similar coloration. So this firefly is, like many species in the Sky Islands of the Southwest, it's more closely related to other species in the mountains of Mexico than it is to other photoras in other parts of the United States.
And I think that was the last species.